in the straight and narrow of our mandate. We are going to start our meeting by going through the proposed agenda. So may I then go to item number 3? It's the proposed agenda, and I want to see by show of hands, members, if we are adopting the agenda as presented. I've got Ms. Maseti, Mr. Gumete, Ms. Mbungose, Mr. Mane, Mr. Spanda, Mr. Bia, Mr. Mkize, and Advocate Sitole, and I think all members. So the agenda is adopted as such. Can we then move to the next item, item number 4? Item number 4, Brian, your camera is on. Mr. Schottel. Thank you. The next item, item number 4, the declaration of interest. Can we have the forms in the board pack? But if there's a member who would like to declare any interest verbally, please do so now. Mr. Svander?
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, colleagues. Chair, with respect to item 7 on the agenda, just to indicate that I'm currently doing work for the Commission. I thought I should be cautious and perhaps declare that, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Svander. Ms. Ngube, please note that although we would not ask Mr. Svander to recuse himself, I think he has indicated that he is, this item is really for noting, but he has indicated that he is involved in that. Thank you for that, Mr. Svander. On that note, colleagues, there are no further verbal declarations. Can we then move on to the next item, item number 5? It's got 9 items on it, and it's the report from the chairperson of the Electricity Subcommittee, Mr. Nhlanhla Gumede, the regulator member primarily responsible for electricity. Mr. Gumede, you have the floor on all 9 items. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to you and the members, and also the members of the public who may be following us on the platform. Chairperson.
Mr. Gumede, may I disturb you? I see there's a hand from Mr. Schotler. I don't know if it's a mistake or Mr. Schotler.
No, it's not a mistake, Chairperson, and I apologize for that because at the time when adoption of agenda was taken, I was actually struggling with my connection. Item number 5.2, Chairperson, is for noting, not for approval, Chairperson.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schotler. We will change that as such, Faye. Mr. Gumede, apologies. You may go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, as indicated, I've got a few items. Almost all of them are actually for noting. But I'll then take the members through the first item, item 5.1. The Electricity Subcommittee is really just here to request the Energy Regulator to note the report from the DMRE, which is attached, and to also note the analysis by NESA, and also to then note that after careful analysis, that we believe that the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy has satisfied all the suspensive conditions that were put up during the concurrence with the ministerial determination on the procurement of 2,500 megawatts of new generation from nuclear. Now, I take the actual report, Chairperson, as read, but just to indicate that this particular phase of the concurrence is not about the regulator being asked to concur. The concurrence was done in August of 2021. It was done, but subject to a number of conditions, 3 conditions to be precise. And the department subsequently, at the beginning of August, then submitted a report that detailed how they responded to the suspensive conditions that were put up during that concurrence. And it was, in essence, Chairperson, what the ER was then basically what the ER is then being asked to do is to note the actual report which is attached, as indicated again as Annex A, is to note the actual report from the DMRE, which details the actual analysis in terms of how they actually were responding to the suspensive conditions. And then, of course, the team has analyzed that, and that analysis is then attached as Annex B. Chair, as indicated, the energy regulator is not asked to concur. The concurrence was done in 2021, in August of 2021, 2 years ago. So all that we are then that the subcommittee is asking is that the energy regulator then note the actual report and note that from the analysis done by the team is that it is we believe that the department has satisfied all of the substantive conditions on the actual concurrence that was done at that time. I will take questions, Chair. Thanks.
Apologies, colleagues. Thank you. Apologies, I struggled to click and open that. So thank you, Mr. Komete. Members, we have this. Mr. Mane, may I start with you because I know that your hand is already up, but other members can follow. Mr. Sibanda, you will be next.
Okay, thanks, Chair, for volunteering me. From my side, Chair, obviously I was under the impression that the submission is here for us to approve. So if it's here for noting and already the concurrence has already been given, so it becomes a muted debate from my side.
Okay. All right, Mr. Mane, then in that case, because in that case, I know I volunteered you, but because I wanted to give you an opportunity to voice out what you needed to voice out, but you feel that because it's the concurrence has already been granted, you wouldn't voice out what you need to voice out.
Maybe, Chair, if I can take you to my confidence, the reason if it was for approval, my issue would have been that obviously I read the tonality of the submission. My fundamental issue with regards to as a matter of principle with just the issue of nuclear is that. From my side, from what I've shared, what I do know, when the program started, it could not get a green light to take off because the country could not afford it. That was the first one. The second one, when now it comes in light of it being part of the transition, I have a fundamental problem with the fact that one of the reasons that is advanced is that as the power stations, coal power stations are being mothballed, then there has to be an additional, or there has to be a picking up of that base load in the form of nuclear. But my concern in the whole transition debate is that what is always muted is that already South Africans have popped up almost R500 billion on a new capacity, which is the new built ESCOM. And with that new build, there was FGDs, which made it to be environmental compliant. And even on that investment, South Africans are sitting reconciling with load shedding. So it's a matter of principle. So if already the concurrence has already been given, so it absorbed me. So my that's why I was saying my concerns, they become a muted debate, but it was along those lines that I was saying if we were to be approving, I was going to abstain.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Simana. We can note your inputs and yeah, thank you. Can I then come to you, Mr. Sibanda, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Mkhize?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you very much to Mr. Gumede. Chair, yes, I'm aware these submissions are here for noting, but perhaps what I'm raising is maybe for future purposes. But specifically, I was looking at our suspensive condition 3, and from the department's response, and basically our condition was that the procurement should not be done through fragmented contracts. And from the department's response, one of the ways for procuring from the market is package splitting, where you have 2 or more packages. Now, I suppose we are probably accepting maybe that this condition was a bit restrictive, and that fragmented contracts may be accepted as long as there are checks and balances in place. And perhaps for future purposes, we could take that as a learning, so that when we couch such conditions, perhaps we don't make them as restrictive as we did in this instance. But I hope I'm reading this correctly, Chair. But I thought that's what the department was saying, that in the market you could actually have split packages, and but as long as there are checks and balances, there's nothing wrong with that, and perhaps for future purposes, Chair, we could take that as a learning. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. We will note that, colleagues, that future learning is that maybe when we put in our conditions, we must allow for other options and possibilities. Mr. Mkhize?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation. I'm a member of the ELS and have had prior sight and deliberation on the matter. It's just that under 3.2, which is page 69 of 185, the black the numbering 13, green numbering 69, under paragraph 3.2, with regard to the conclusion. I had requested that and there was agreement to that effect, that the issue to read that NERSA is therefore satisfied that DMRE has satisfied the suspensive conditions and should proceed with the preparations, including procurement of a nuclear build program to the extent of 2,500 megawatt at a pace and scale that the country can afford. Just to be very clear that in terms, because there was an issue even when we concurred that you've got issues of preparation, but already there was prior preparation done, and then this was final preparation to move to the stage of procurement. And that is what then the suspensive condition was saying, look at this before you can even proceed with the issues of procurement. So I think that should be categorical in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. May I just check with the colleagues if you've captured what Mr. Mkhize, in fact, Faye, if you've captured that, and if anyone is opposed to the suggestion by Mr. Mkhize? First, any opposing views? None. We accept. Faye, can you confirm that you've captured that and it will be included in the record of this meeting?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll do that. The reason that I'm raising my hand is on a point of correction regarding the comments and the adoption of the comments made by Ms. Simane in terms of purpose. You have indicated that we'll note them for the purposes of the record. However, that decision has already been made, and as she has indicated, it's mute. Therefore, it becomes difficult to note them for this record, as opposed to the comments made by Mr. Sibanda and Mr. Mkhize, which are forward-looking, as well as Mr. Mkhize's in terms of correcting that conclusion in the document. But in terms of the purpose for Ms. Simane's noting of Ms. Simane's input, Chairperson, I have a bit of a governance issue. I think Mr. Ntanzi or Ms. Mkhize can assist in articulating it better. Thank you.
So are you proposing that I give Mr. Ntanzi or Ms. Mkhize?
Chairperson, if my articulation was not
Yeah, but for
correct,
me, Faye, what I would say would note is I would just note the comment. I mean, that was made by Ms. Simane on her, and I mean it's noting it. It's not. I don't see it affecting the decision, but just noting a view. Mr. Ntanzi, though, you can come in. I'll come to you, Ms. Simane.
Yeah, Chair, I think Ms. Ncube has explained the position. The board has taken a decision on this matter. It cannot review or revisit its own decision. The decision taken by the board in August binds all regulator members. It cannot, Chair. Hence, we have difficulty in the board now noting the comments on the decision that has already been taken. Similarly, with round robins, Chairperson, taken outside of the meeting, the board does not revisit those decisions. They just note them because they have been taken outside. There is a process there. But this one, where a decision has been taken, there is no need to revisit such decisions. Lawyers will explain it better, Chair, in terms of the fructus officio principle. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ntanzi. Before we close this matter, I just want to hear Mr. Mane.
Hi, Chair. From my side, I didn't see any difficulty because it's a matter of minuting. So, because Chair, I'm just concerned that going forward, our views will be censored by RSU. So, so I don't see any reason why should my input be debatable because it's a matter of just minuting what I've said without it being having to be censored.
Thank you, Mr. Mane. Ms. Mpungose?
Thank you, Chairperson. My understanding of the input made was that it wasn't trying to reopen a discussion and a decision taken back in 2021. It was just a comment to say that initially when the member read the report, she was under the impression that it was for approval. However, seeing that it's for noting, her comments are moot, but she carried on and gave her concerns to say these are the issues that she would have had on the report. But now that is already adopted, it's neither here nor there. So it can just be noted that because she was under the impression that it's for approval. So now she acknowledges it's for noting. We are not reopening the decision that was taken back then. So it's just noting the comments made and her reservations that she would have had.
Thank you, Ms. Mpungose. Colleagues, can we close on this matter? Faye and RSU, may I suggest that we are not changing the decision. We will have it as a minute, and it is a minute of what happened, because this is what happened. That Mr. Simane made that comment, and we'll note it as such. The other two, Mr. Sbanda's comment is also for future use, and we note that. The one that must be changed in our submission is the one correction made by Mr. Mkhize. Can we then close this matter? May I then, by show of hands, see if we are happy to note this with these final remarks? By show of hands, colleagues. I've got Advocate Sitole, Mr. Gumete, Mr. Sbanda, Mr. Mpungose, Mr. Mkhize, Mr. Bia, Ms. Simane, and Ms. Maseti. Thank you. We have noted that, Faye. Mr. Gumete, may you please take us to the next item?
Thank you, Chairperson. The next items, almost all of them are really for noting on the, a number of them are about consultation papers that were tackled by and approved for publication, approved by the ELS. And the next item deals with the consultation on the cost of supply study. Again, Chair, I will take the actual document as read, just to indicate that we are just here to request the energy regulator to note, as per the as per the delegation matrix, to note that the ELS had approved the publication of the consultation paper on the review of the cost of supply framework, and to also note the timelines that have been which are associated therewith. Just again, by way of maybe just a quick recap for new members, that the cost of supply framework was approved in 2016, and but unfortunately since 2016 the energy regulator has only really received only 8 municipalities have been able to implement fully the cost of supply study-based tariffs. So we are actually looking at seeing at ways of actually improving compliance and participation, and that's what in the main the actual consultation is about. Chairperson, the maybe just to indicate that this is now driven largely by the fact that, unfortunately, in October of 2022, the High Court of South Africa ordered that the guidelines and benchmarking approach that was used by NERSA in approving municipal tariffs was declared to be unlawful, invalid, and with no force and effect, and prohibited NERSA from using this this approach in determining or considering and approving municipal tariffs from the period of 24-25 financial year. Hence the urgency for us to then look at a more suitable and Section 15 compliant approach to be able to actually approve this. So on the 1st of August 2023, the ELS members deliberated on this and then raised a number of a number of concerns which are indicated in the number of issues that are indicated in the under Section 5.1. But in essence, Chair, we do believe the actual approval of the framework itself would be done by ER. At this stage, all that the subcommittee has done is actually approved the publication of the consultation paper, and we are therefore just asking the energy regulator to note the committee's decision to approve the publication of the consultation paper on the review of the cost of supply framework and the timelines associated therewith. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Members, we have a submission, a document in front of us. Any questions, comments, or points that we would want the consultation paper to enhance? The first hand I see is that of Mr. Sibanda. Mr. Sibanda, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just one question of clarity. So one of the identified shortcomings in the current cost of supply framework is the question of testing for prudency and efficiency. But the organization has prudency guidelines that were developed with input from all the 3 regulatory divisions. Now, in the consultation paper, we've not made mention or made reference of these prudency guidelines, and we come across as not too sure as to how we should be testing for prudency, and therefore asking stakeholders their views on this. But essentially, I'm saying, what is there a particular reason why we've not made reference to the prudency guidelines? And perhaps if there is anything that's missing there, then we could then ask the stakeholders around it. But for me, it was just odd that we have these guidelines, but we're not making any reference to them in the consultation paper. Maybe if I can be clarified on that, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. Mr. Gumede?
Thanks, Chairperson. I guess the team can add. However, I think, Chair, the first challenge here that we have, I guess, in the process is that we do have the first challenge of just getting people to comply with submission. And therefore, once we can actually ensure that at least there is submission and there's compliance with that, with the framework, as then we can look at how we can improve it. The point that is raised by Mr. Sibanda is noted, but I think, Chair, in terms of the challenges that we are facing, the biggest challenge right now is just compliance, and the issues raised by Mr. Sibanda are very valid, but I would like to say, perhaps, and the team can then add to this, but I'd like to say that it should be something that will then follow on once we actually have some level of compliance with the framework itself. And then, of course, then we can then be able to then start looking at other issues. But I see Mr. Sichotlo's hand is up, Chair. I would basically request him to maybe to supplement the input that I may have provided. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kumede. Mrs. Shortler?
Chairperson, I agree with what the FTRM is saying, but one of the reasons that we did not include the prudency assessment is because the prudency has already been approved by the board. So it is inherent in whatever we do that we'll do a prudency assessment. So we cannot go again and consult on it when already a decision has been made on it. But we note the comment by the member. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Choto. I think what Mrs. Banda was requesting is that we can, rather than asking for members of the public to comment on a prudency, because we want them to talk about or to make suggestions on what the prudency test would be, we can ask them to comment on our prudency and efficiency testing. And that's really the reference. Did I understand you correctly, Mr. Sibanda? And I'm in support of what you're saying, that let's comment on what is, let's make the members of the public comment on what is there.
Yes, Chair, you're correct. All I was saying is that we do have prudency guidelines. So why reinvent the wheel when we are consulting stakeholders out there as if we're saying we don't know how? Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
So, okay, could we have that addition, colleagues? And I don't know how bulky it would make or we can refer them to that part or to whatever link that we have that would have this the guidelines that we already have. Any other comments, colleagues? Mr. Kumet?
Chairperson, I note the suggestion. However, we have to remember that the consultation paper has since been published. I'm not too sure to what extent in us maybe making any changes, proposing any changes to it now would affect the consultation period which is stipulated in there. We are operating under a very tight deadline and timelines on this. And the reason why I responded the way that I did, Chair, was a guided response that simply says, yes, we do have this framework, and it's quite clear that to the extent to which when we then receive the actual data when we are considering the actual submissions, we will take that into account. We will, because the actual framework, the actual prudency and efficiency testing framework is already been adopted by the board. However, I'm just concerned whether we can actually, at this late stage, when this matter is here for noting by the ER, that we can actually change the consultation paper to the effect that might actually then change the timelines that are actually incorporated therein. That is my concern, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kumete. Let me get Mr. Mkhize and Mr. Sibanda to comment, and then we will close this matter. Mr. Mkhize?
Thanks, Chairperson. In fact, I think I'm very much covered by Mr. Kumete, and I think that with regard to the processes that are going to unfold, then we can be able, in terms of when we're looking at the consultation itself, we can be able to raise this matter even when we are workshopping it, looking at it from the point of view in the sufficiency of our prudence review. But at the moment, it's the issue of whether to publish or not is muted, and therefore we just need to factor that in the subsequent processes in terms of checking. Because the document is published and the timelines are very tight. I would support what Mr. Kumete said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Mrs. Banda, I see you withdrew your hand, and are we fine that we conclude?
Yes, Chair, I'm covered by Mr. Mkhize. I don't think there's a need to amend the document now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, can we then go to item 6 of the submission? May I just check before we go there? We mentioned a methodology here on page 2, item 3.3.3.3a, that there is no provision in the methodology. Which methodology are we referring to here?
Chairperson, we're dealing with the cost of supply framework. So the issue here, it's about the actual ring fencing of accounts. But I think the team can indicate, but it's actually in the cost of supply framework. All of that is referencing the actual cost of supply framework. That's the methodology we're talking about.
So it's the cost of supply methodology, the existing cost of supply methodology that was recommended, or that has been in place. Is that what we're referring to?
Correct, Chairperson.
Okay. Maybe we get, I think next time we've got a number of methodologies, so next time it's good to be quite clear about it, but because it's been published, it's been published. So our colleagues, item 6.1, where the electricity subcommittee is requesting us to note the publication. By show of hands, colleagues. I've got Mr. Kumete, Ms. Maseti, Ms. Banda, Mr. Mkhize, Ms. Mbungose, Ms. Sibia, and Ms. Simane. Advocate Sitole.
Chair, I do support. I'm struggling with raising my hand. My mouse is frozen. I do support the decision.
Faye, you've got the decision, and note the comments that have been made. Thank you. Can we then move on, colleagues, to item number 5.3? Mr. Gumede, you still have the floor.
Thanks, Chairperson. Again, this is also about consultation papers, but this one, Chair, it's again, we're here to request the ER to note the publication of the decision of the ELS to approve the publication of the consultation paper on separate 6-year negotiated price agreements, NPA in short, for each of the 4 of the 5 Glencore Merafe Chrome Venture joint venture ferrochrome smelter operations, which are in Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and in the Northwest. Chairperson, again, I'll take the actual documents that have been read, just to indicate that on the 4th of July 2023, the ELS approved the publication of the consultation paper on these NPAs for each of the 4 smelters. And these are the smelters which are listed under paragraph 4.2.1. And I just wanted to, Chairperson, to indicate that the numbers that may be reflected there, like 4.2.3, in the questions that members may ask, that the numbers, I'll assume that the numbers are actually supposed to be highlighted in yellow to indicate that they are actually not, they are not for, the actual numbers themselves are not something that we actually discuss at this stage. It may change later. And essentially, Chairperson, just to also indicate that We are the hope is that the decision on the NESA's decision will be made by the 15th of November 2023, so that these NPAs can then come into effect early next year. Chairperson, the actual recommendations are on paragraph 7.1, which, just to assist the process, to just read them for the record, to indicate that we are here to request that the energy regulator note the application by Eskom for the separate 6-year negotiated price or NPAs for each of the four of the 5 Glencore Merafe chrome joint venture ferrochrome smelter operations in Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and the Northwest, to note the publication of the consultation paper on each of those of these NPAs, which were approved by the ELS of the 4th of July, and also to note the timelines that are included therein. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Colleagues, members of the regulator, there's a submission in front of us for noting. Any questions, comments? I don't see any hands from my side, so Faye, can I take that the items as listed in 7 point? Yes. Mr. Mane? Yeah. Mr. Mane?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. I think, Chair, there is a serious disjuncture between the decisions we're taking and what is on the agenda, because all these items are listed as for approval. Even this one is listed as for approval. That's the first one. The second one...
Sorry, Mr. Mane, can I just check that on the agenda that I have, it's for noting? So
on board pad, which is where I'm looking at, Chair, it says approval.
Yes, it does, Chair.
Yes, I see that it says that apologies. I think I'm reading a paper note. It says approval, but I think the recommendations are noting.
Okay.
Yeah,
then,
but please carry on, Mr. Mann. Apologies for interrupting you.
Thank you very much. Then my second one is on the veil with regards to the actual details of these arrangements. I think when the time comes for the regulator to approve this, there has to be no stone that is left unturned. Reason for me saying that these kind of arrangements, to the very best of my knowledge, are one of the reasons historically that have caused Eskom to have financial problems. So when the time comes, I think we won't be finding ourselves to be told there's any information that is not for our consumption. So I think to the ELS, between now and November, they will have to arrange that we have sight of the actual arrangements, especially the pricing of the electricity that will be given to the smelters. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mane. And I think when Mr. Gumede said there are things that are not it's for public consumption, but as far as the regulator is concerned, we have the right to view any and all of the information that is required, Mr. Mane, I can assure you. If there are no further comments, colleagues, can I just take you to item 7, like 7.1, that we are noting those items as 7.11, 7.12, and 7.13 as read out by Mr. Gumede. By show of hands, colleagues. I've got Mr. Sibanda, Mr. Mkhize, Mr. Gumede, Ms. Maseti, Mr. Mane, Advocate Sithole, Mr. Bia, and Mr. Mbungose. Thank you. You've got that, Faye. Mr. Gumede, you have the floor. Mr. Mane, I see your hand is... Oh, yeah. Okay. Mr. Gumede, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. The next item, again, is also for noting. It's also about consultation papers. This one is the consultation paper on the electricity price determination methodology regulatory report. We are requesting the energy regulator to note the ELS approved the that the ELS approved the publication of the rules of the rules consultation paper. And again, just by way of perhaps just I take the actual report itself to be read, but just to indicate that on the 13th of July 2023, the ELS held a follow-up workshop to discuss the EPDM rules and there are some of the issues that have been were raised by the members are actually indicated in table 1. I won't go through any of those, Chairperson. And again, on the 1st of August 2023, members of the ELS considered the EPDM rules consultation paper and raised issues that are again listed under table 2. I take that as read. Chairperson, we are just here to request the ER to note to note that the ELS approved the publication of the consultation paper on the EPDM rules, and to also to look at the timelines that are included therein. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Colleagues, members of the regulator, we have a submission in front of us, and if we could have inputs, comments, or questions. And Faye, may I request, I think, going forward, if we could really change, align our agenda that's on the pack with what we have on paper, that stuff for approval must be written for approval.
Chairperson, my apologies. I'm not sure whether the structure started, but I will make sure that it will be fixed.
Thank you. Mr. Sibanda, I see your hand.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just 2 issues from my side, Chair. Obviously, this is for noting, but the first issue, Chair, we have previously, when we were discussing the methodology, just emphasized the data intensiveness of the methodology, and one of the inputs obviously is an understanding of the consumer load profiles, and that's dependent on the rollout of smart meters. But I was just wondering, in the meantime, in the absence or inadequacy of smart meters, what could be used to plug the gap? And I'm not sure if ELS has looked into that. Perhaps it's something that we want to probe from stakeholders in our consultation. But secondly, the issue of our capacity to implement, and the fact that I think we should be building that capacity now to ensure that come implementation in time, it's all systems go from our side. And then lastly, Chair, I looked at our responses to the stakeholder comments, and I'm not sure whether these have been published, but I think we need to moderate our tone and remove emotion from our responses, especially I think when we're responding to Eskom. For instance, there are instances where we refer to Eskom's response as a knee-jerk and irrational reaction that doesn't deserve a response. And from a regulator, Chair, I don't think that comes out the right way. Or, when we say things like Eskom is entitled to its own opinion and all of that. So I think we just need to perhaps moderate our language a bit when responding to stakeholders. But yeah, Chair, those are the things that I wanted to raise. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. Mr. Gumede, are you able to respond or provide some insights on the information requirements, our capacity? And I think this one of the responses, I want to urge all of us that I think when we are writing, we need to have the integrity in place and all of the values that we have, and mutual respect is one of them. And I think this trend of writing like this is also found in some of our submissions. So if I think Mr. Sibanda has requested this on this particular one, and I think going forward, the colleagues, let us think properly how we want to package things. Mr. Kumet?
Thank you, Chairperson. Maybe to start with that comment, Chair, that we like to, I personally like to apologize profusely if any of such wording does, or the utterances and show of disrespect really for inputs by others, that we may not agree with anybody, or our analysis may yield a different approach, but it must be handled that way. And if there's any of such, we really honestly, there's no justification for we always have to play, as we indicate, we always have to consider the input and not the person. And even in terms of respect, how we formulate a response to anybody, it must reflect that. And honestly, just I would like to apologize on that. There is no excuse for that. And then on the other issue, the data intensity, Chair, this was discussed as well at ELS, as well as the capacity question. And it's something that if it's not, it would be an oversight if it's not reflected in the consultation paper, because it's issues that were raised by the members themselves, but also clarified that unfortunately the regulation is about data. And the issue of use of proxies, for instance, going forward in the initial phases, it was also discussed. So we like to then say we're taking the actual advice from Mr. Sibanda. I think it's basically enhancement in terms of how we actually proceed, but going forward, it's an issue that needs to be considered. That we need data, but in the absence of that data, we always need to then have proxies. It's a question of whether in the use of those proxies, to what extent do they those proxies comply with Section 15(1) of the Electricity Regulation Act. And then in capacity, clearly something, once a decision, unfortunately a lot of these things are predicated on a decision by the ER. Once a decision by the ER is reached, it then starts a process that will need to be effected, including part of that is actually building our own capacity, modeling systems, data, just training. There are a lot of things that to be triggered by a decision, but clearly a lot of that is predicated on a decision. But the points that have been raised by Mr. Sibanda, yes, were also raised by the members of the ELS, and if we have not responded adequately to them, we'll definitely respond to that as we proceed with this and other of the methodologies that we are dealing with. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Kumete. Mr. Sibanda, I trust that you are comfortable with the responses, that this is something that's going to be fine-tuned as we go.
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, colleagues, can I then, if there are no further questions, take you to item 7, where we are required to note this is on page 5 of 155, that the energy regulator must note the approved publication indicative timelines of the EPDM rules and the consultation paper. By show of hands, colleagues. I've got Ms. Maseti, Mr. Mkhize, Mr. Kumete, Ms. Mbungos, Mr. Sibanda, Mr. Beer, and Advocate Sitole. Thank you. Faye, you've got that?
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kumete, you still have the floor. Item 5.5.
Thank you, Chairperson. Again, this matter is for noting. We're noting the actual publication and the time. For regulatory clearing account, or the RCA application, for the final year of the MYPD4 period, which is FY 21-22, and in essence, just as indicated, the the actual consultation paper was published. So just by way of background, to just indicate that, and again, Chairperson, I'm taking this report as being read, just to indicate that, maybe just to clarify here on this one, because there seems to be an error, because we've already held the actual public the public hearing on this has already been held. So just to correct what is appearing on paragraph 7.5, and I don't know, apologies for the oversight, because it appears as if it's actually still going to be held, unless, of course, and maybe the team can correct me, because when I was reading again, just in preparation, I noticed that I had signed this, but I know that we've actually had the actual public hearings on this, and there were presenters that presented on this extensively, and they made recommendations. But Chairperson, we're just here to this again is a matter that will then come to ER for a decision, and at that stage, all of the details that are behind the application will then be discussed. But we're just here to request the energy regulator to note the actual publication, or rather the actual decision by the ELS to approve the publication of the 2021 ESCOM RCA application, which was done on the 2nd of June. Actually, that's where the problem was, 2nd of June 2023. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Colleagues, any questions, comments? I don't see any hands. May I just check two things? On the page that has the table that we have here, I think it's page 4 or 5. We have the table. We have a point where we have that we're requesting the licensee to provide comments on the ELS recommendations before approval by the ER. Can you take me into your confidence? What is this meant to achieve? And why are we doing that?
Thanks, Chairperson. Again, there was a regulator decision that said before a matter, if there's a recommendation, for instance, which might be contrary, and maybe LS can articulate this better than I can, but if the applicant had made an application and the ELS was going to make a recommendation which might be very is made, we needed to then have to give the licensee an opportunity, or the applicant an opportunity to be consulted, to understand what those deviations are going to be, what justifies those deviations, and to actually just get them to comment on that before a decision is made. It's part of the procedural fairness issues that were raised in a number of judgments that we lost. We were just indicated that we had not consulted the applicant. But I think Mr. Mirati can do a better job in describing this than I can. But that's where it originated from, Chair. Thanks. Maybe Mr. Mirati, Chair, with your permission.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Mr. Murat.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, members and colleagues. I think Mr. Gumede has touched it on one key judgment that we received, that when we discover new information that did not form part of what was originally submitted, the court has made judgments and also guided that we need to afford the other party an opportunity to respond or to comment on those aspects, so that there is fairness in our judgment. So the input that the member Gumede has given, it is correct, Chairperson.
What I'm understanding is that when there's new information that we are going to make a decision on, then that's when this is applicable. But in this particular instance, I mean, we're already predicting that we'll have new information. Because they've applied, they've given us all the info, and we are going to make a decision based on that. So So I'm not sure if the court had said that we made our decision based on new information that we had not consulted the applicant on, it probably is different. In this one, we have the application, and I don't know of this new information that we're already anticipating we are going to have, that we are going to consult them on. Is that proper?
Chairperson, can I just say, in terms of the plan, just to clarify, so in terms of the plan, what we had then done is that we request the team to plan it in, that we need to actually, as part of the plan, whether there is new information, in which case that particular activity will become mute if there is no new, if there is no deviation and no new information, because it's actually two issues. It's about a deviation from the methodology as well as new as well as new information. If we don't have either of those, then that activity will not take place. But during planning, we actually plan it in. So that is the plan, Chair. And in respect of this particular one, there might not be a need, especially following the public hearing that we had. There may not be a need, but if there is, all we're then saying, Chair, it needs to be planned in. So that's all it's saying. That's a plan, Chair. It's not saying that we will do it, that we will actually do as per. We'll actually follow all of those items. If there is a need, we will consult. If there isn't, then we won't.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Mr. Gumede, just one last comment from me. I know that we had a public hearing on this matter, and I requested a work plan or a roadmap of how we are going to do this. The roadmap that's here is different from the roadmap that was submitted to me to the meeting. In that, if we could also just realign that. I don't want to drag the meeting, but when I look at this and look at what was provided on that day, these are two different documents. So can we please align that?
Will do, Chair. Thanks. Noted.
Thank you. Colleagues, by show of hands, if we are happy to note this item. And the recommendations are on page 545, that we must note I've got Mr. Sibanda, Mr. Mkhize, Mr. Gumede, Ms. Maseti, Ms. Bungose, Simane, Advocate Sitole, and Ms. Sibia. Thank you. Faye, note.
Noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Gumede, we are on item 5.6.
Thanks, Chair. Again, this report is here for noting. It is really it's a report on the free basic electricity determination and the funding thereof. It emanated from, I think, from a request from ER members on this, especially in terms of the to look at the vending rate. And so the actual report, Chair, again taken as read, the ELS actually deliberated on this, and we are just here to then request the ER to note the report on the free basic electricity determination and funding, as well as how the FBE of 50 kilowatt hours would have escalated to date since its inception. Chair, again, I really would not want to bore the members by reading through the item. It is there. Maybe just to note under paragraph 6 that there was a concern that we wanted to find out in terms of the vending rate, how that might have increased over years. So if you look at that table 1, there is a 10-year trend that has been given there, and it does indicate that perhaps the increases on the vending rate have been fairly contained, say for 1 year in 2014, when it increased by 21.62%. Overall, if you look at 2021, it was reduced by 36.94%. But overall, the increases have been very much linked to inflation. Chair, then our request is that for the ER to then note the actual FBE report, and to note how it is funded. and how the actual rate is of 50 kilowatt hours per month would have escalated since inception to date. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Members, colleagues, any questions, comments? Mr. Sibanda?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. Gumede. Chair, I think perhaps Mr. Gumede has answered the first question that I had. I wasn't too sure what triggered this report and its purpose, but yeah, I understand it was a request from ER. But I'm just wondering, Chair, whether we could actually extract some policy issues, perhaps that we could communicate with the relevant departments, whether it's DPMRE or National Treasury or the other departments, from a policy. But I know previously we have communicated in terms of the inadequacy of the 50 kilowatt hours, and I'm not sure whether we have ever received a response around that. But I don't know if in this instance, Chair, we could maybe draw extract some policy issues that we may want to communicate, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. Mr. Gumede, any inputs from your side or response to that?
Chair, I think that's a valuable input from Mr. Sibanda, and it's something that the team can then look at in terms of course, we have at least as part of our new strategy, for instance, have decided on these quarterly meetings or engagements with at least the DMRE. It is a matter that can be included in those conversations, and I think the team will then take that matter going forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. On that note, colleagues, Mr. Sibanda, I must assure you that there's been numerous attempts to move the FBE rate from the 50 kilowatt hours per month to some other number, but what never seems to be achieved is a proper study by a reputable body or institution that can come up and peg then the next number that this should be moved to. But I think that the more it gets raised all the time, and at some point there will be that study done. By show of hands, colleagues, if we can go to item number 8 and the recommendations that we note the report, how the FBE is funded and how the 50 kilowatt hour rate. I've got Ms. Maseti, Mr. Mane, Mr. Sibanda, Mr. Gumede, Ms. Bia, Mr. Mkhize, Advocate Stolle, and Ms. Mbungos. Thank you, Faye. You've got the voting. Mr.
Yes,
Gumede, I think the next one is really a round robin, and I think for round robins, unless there's anything additional, we are just going to note that.
Chairperson, yes, we do. We just need to actually read for the record what the round robin was about. And in essence, the round robin was about the confirmation. The round robin was about which was approved by the majority of the members was for the reasons for decisions for the issuing of the transmission license to the National Transmission Company of South Africa, which was tabled at the Energy Regulator meeting of meeting number 262 of the 27th of July 2023. That is all, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Advocate Stolle, I see your hand.
Apologies, Chair.
Oh, okay. Well, that one we note, Mr. Gumede. Can you take us to then item 5.8? I know that it was somehow late for this, but I think members are happy to consider this item.
Chairperson, thank you, and I'd like to thank the members and apologize again for the lateness. I don't know where it may have come from, but this again is one of those consultation papers which were discussed at the ELS and approved by the ELS. Again, I'll take this as read. It's really just again it's as indicated, there's still going to be an opportunity to then engage with the content. But at this stage, it was just that the ELS had approved the publication of the consultation paper on the NRS 048-9, that edition 3 that has been proposed. Chair, I take it as read as well, and apologies for being late. Honestly, I had no idea where it was delayed in terms of submission. But as indicated, Chair, there's nothing additional that I'd like to raise. Perhaps just to indicate that at the ELS meeting, there were a couple of questions that were raised, especially in line with the recent court decisions that were made, and the clarity was provided in terms of how the issues of the recent court cases, are actually tackled in the proposed code. And basically, Chair, we are just indicating that the ELS had then approved the publication of the consultation paper on the NRS 048, and that's in paragraph 6. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Before we go into the questions, I see your hand is up, Ms. Ngu.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would just like to state for the record and for Mr. Gumede's comfort that the error in terms of the lateness was on RSU side, me in particular. I did acknowledge receipt, but however, it was inadvertently left out when we were loading the documents. We were alerted by ELR and we loaded it accordingly, hence the comment on board pad. We do apologize for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ngube. Mr. Gumede, I think you will be relieved to hear that it was not from your side.
Noted, Chairperson. Noted.
Thank you.
It's human to err.
Yeah, thank you, colleagues. We have the consultation document that was published, and if there are any questions, comments that may be used to enhance it when we get it back or when we get the comments, can we have them now? None. Can we then go to item number 6 on the, what page is this? It's page 3, the recommendation that the Energy Regulator notes the consultation paper on the NRS 0489 edition 3. By show of hands, colleagues. With Mr. Gumede, Ms. Maseti, Mr. Spanda, Ms. Pungose, Advocate Sitole, Ms. Bia, Ms. Simane, and Mr. Mkiza. Thank you, Faye. You've got the note.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, we are in item 5.9, and these are the minutes. And unless Mr. Gumede wants to emphasize a point or two, Mr. Mkiza, your hand is still up. Thank you.
So it was a lingering hand.
Thank you. Mr. Gumede, please help us if there are points that you would want to magnify out of the minutes of the 2nd of May and those of the 4th of July.
Chairperson, none. I just take it. I actually take those minutes as read again, Chairperson. But we can handle questions if there are any. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mkiza.
I seem to have a problem with the hand. I've tried to bring it down.
Okay, all right, Mr. Mkiza. Colleagues, by show of hands, if we can note both sets of minutes, those of the 2nd of May and 4th of July. Good. Ms. Maseti, Ms. Simane, Mr. Gumede, Mr. Mkiza, Ms. Spanda, Mr. Spanda, Advocate Tolle, and Ms. Mpungose. Thank you. Okay, the minutes are noted. Colleagues, that brings us to the end of the report from the chairperson of the Electricity Subcommittee, Mr. Gumede. And thank you, Mr. Gumede, for your contribution and input. We are now going to move on to the next set of reports. This is from the chairperson of the Petroleum Pipeline Subcommittee, Mr. Mkiza, the regulator member primarily responsible for petroleum pipelines regulations at NESA. Mr. Mkiza, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. From my side, I don't have any specific issues I want to highlight from the minutes of the Petroleum Pipeline Subcommittee, meeting number 175, which was held on Wednesday, the 5th of July, 2023.
Members,
I take it as right.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Members, any points that you would like to raise from those minutes, as Mr. Mkhize has indicated? If none, members, can we indicate by show of hands if we are approving these minutes, noting these minutes? Got Ms. Maseti, Mr. Gumede, Mr. Sibanda, Advocate Sithole, Mr. Mkhize, Mr. Mane, and Ms. Mpungose. Thank you, Faye. The minutes are noted. Colleagues, we are then going to move to the next item on our agenda, item number 7, now that we have concluded the report of the Petroleum Pipelines Subcommittee to the report of the Piped Gas Subcommittee, which is going to be presented by the regulator member primarily responsible for piped gas, Ms. Mfundo Maseti. Ms. Maseti, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the first report that we have from the Piped Gas Subcommittee is the final report with recommendations on the inquiry that was undertaken by the subcommittee to identify measures to facilitate competition, investment, and to make sure that we achieve security of supply in the South African gas market. Chairperson, the background to this report is that as we conduct the periodic competition review or competition assessment in terms of Section 21 of the Gas Act, the energy regulator more than a year ago requested that perhaps as a forward-looking approach by the regulator, we don't only look at the state of competition and make findings only. Maybe let's be proactive in trying to identify what are the measures that can then be implemented in order to make sure that competition is facilitated or promoted, as well as investments, as those are some of the objectives of the Gas Act. So this is in response also to that request by the energy regulator. And secondly, Chairperson, then this inquiry itself, it was undertaken by invoking Section 4D, which allows the energy regulator to initiate inquiries, and read with Rule 8 of the pipe gas rules. Chairperson, in terms of this project, a number of challenges were identified. As you will know very well, that the gas industry is still at the nascent stage, and that the regulatory approach is one that is light-handed. However, for the past 14 years, there hasn't been significant growth in terms of the volumes or the output of gas, number one. Number two, in terms of investments that will ensure that they happen at the wholesale level, where you've got other suppliers of gas. The only entry into the market were at the trading level, and that still made us to still be faced with only one supplier. So the fact that these investments did not occur at the desired level, as well as competition is still not improved, we identified some of the challenges and interventions that will be required. Some of the challenges are delays in the policy interventions to enable the sort of the gas to power, so that it is an anchor to the gas industry, and some of the policies that could have been in place. Not only that, Chairperson, we also identified the need for legislative amendments, particularly when it comes to distribution, because there is no mandatory access to distribution pipelines, yet it is a network. So that is one of the areas that we have identified for access. Number two, the tariff for distribution is also not regulated by NERSA, and that also resulted in tariffs that are exploited, which are very high compared to the ones that we regulated NERSA. Also on issues of regasification, this is a natural monopoly and an essential facilities, the access there. So that is in short, Chairperson, and we are now, I'm referring members to paragraph 4 of the covering submission, just to note the comments made by other members and the responses directing them to where these matters are addressed in the report. The other table that members would like to maybe take note of, summarizing the issues that were identified, is table number 1 on page 11 of the actual report. If you can go there, you will see some of the recommendations. Before the energy regulator today, I am therefore requesting the energy regulator to approve the final report with the recommendations on the inquiry on measures to facilitate competition, investment, and achieve security of supply. And that report is annexed as Annexure 1 here, Chair. The second decision that we are requesting is the energy regulator to approve the frequently asked questions on these final recommendations, and they are also attached here as Annexure 2, Chairperson. Number 3, Chair, we request that this report be published in our website, and to the extent that, Chairperson, there are also recommendations pointing to policy interventions as well as legislative amendments. We're also requesting that perhaps this report can be submitted to the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. That is an additional request, Chair, as 2.1.4. That we are requesting. Thank you, Chairperson, for the opportunity, but just to indicate to members, now that these measures have been identified, the report will not just gather dust on the shelves. We will make sure that on an annual basis, there will be progress report to see how we are doing in terms of those measures that have been identified. Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Masetti. Thank you for the context and the background on this. May I give an opportunity to the members to make comments and enhancements before we approve this report? Members? Ms. Masetti, it looks like it's very clear. There are no questions or comments. In that case, may I then move you, colleagues, to it's page 4 of 117 on item 5.1.
Chairperson?
Yes.
Mr. Sibanda had his hand up.
Oh, okay. Mr. Sibanda, I don't know how I don't see your hand, but Mr. Sibanda, please go ahead.
No, Chair, thanks. I raised it late. Chair, just to indicate that I actually had an interaction with the team and I had provided my comments and I was happy with the way that they were responded to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sibanda. And I think that's a practice we must get into of getting comments and responses before the meeting so that the meeting can really flow smoothly. Colleagues, we are on 5.1. The recommendation is that we approve the final report with the recommendations on the inquiry on measures to facilitate competition, investment, and achieve security of supply in South African piped gas industry. It's attached as Annexure I. The second recommendation is that we approve the frequently asked questions regarding the final report. It's attached as Annexure 2. And the last one is that the publication of the final report with recommendations on the inquiry on the measures to facilitate competition, investment, and achieve security of supply in Southern African piped gas industry, which is attached as Annexure Annexure 1, and that's the other one on the frequently asked question attached as Annexure 2. By show of hands, members.
Chairperson?
Yes, Ms.
Sorry, Chairperson, for doing this. Ms. Masetti did indicate in her presentation the inclusion of recommendation 5.1.4 dealing with submission of the report, just for the record, sir.
Okay, good. So 5.1.4 is a submission of the report to the relevant authorities.
Yes.
Thank you. Apologies for that. Mr. Mkhize, are you still, your hand is still voting?
I'm still supporting.
Yes. By show of hands, colleagues, I've got Mr. Mkhize, Mr. Mane, Mr. Sibanda, Ms. Beer, Mr. Kumede, Ms. Masetti, and Advocate Sithole. Faye, the report is approved, and 5.14 is also added. Ms. Masetti, you still have the floor. I think you are taking us to item 7.2.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. And my apologies, Chairperson, for not recognizing the input from Mr. Sibanda, which was addressed by the team. Thank you, Mr. Sibanda, for that. Chairperson, the next report from the Pipe Gas Subcommittee are just the minutes of the meeting that was held on 6 July 2023. Chairperson, I don't have any issues to emphasize here, but I'm happy to take questions of clarity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Massetti. Members, any questions for clarity from the minutes of the Pipe Gas meeting of the 6th of July, 2023? None. May I, by show of hands, colleagues, see if we are happy to note these minutes? Got Ms. Simane, Ms. Massetti, Mr. Kumede, Advocate Tole, Mr. Sibanda, Ms. Mpungose, and Mr. Mkhize. Thank you. Faye, the minutes are noted. And colleagues, I think according to my agenda, this is the point where we are going to move on to the other part of the meeting that is closed. And at this point, I would like to thank the members of the public for joining our meeting. And I think at some point we need to have either RSU or whatever department is the suitable department at NESA to maybe get a feel of the inputs that members of the public may have, what they think we can improve and what they think would make our meetings easier for them to follow. I think we have had this for years, and we need to have an understanding of how we are portray how we are coming across to our stakeholders. So I don't know if this is the right place to suggest that, but Mr. Ndanzi, if we could find a way or a committee that could help us with just that understanding of our meeting to that. On that